Hello everybody, my name is Brady Kasper. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm the chair of the finance committee. I think I'm on year 8 or so of being the chair of the committee, so it's been a great time. We, as the committee, really enjoy our work, serving the church and looking at numbers all the time, which is kind of an odd thing to enjoy, but I think we do it. It's great. We're going to do about 3 different things today. We're going to start off with some recognition of people who do some amazing things here at the church on their own time. We're going to talk about the role of the finance committee, just to make sure that everybody's level set on what we do and what we do specifically to protect the church over the course of time. Then we're going to go look at some numbers. We're going to look at 2025 results and how we did. From last year, we'll look at just the overall financial position of the church, and we'll look at 2026's budget and take any questions on any of those items that anybody's got. So it should be an entertaining 35-40 minutes or so, for sure, at least for me. Nothing says entertainment like numbers.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, we'll start with some recognition. So one of the things that's been really great over the post-COVID period at the church, when sometimes we've had some tight money things that we've had to deal with, is that the financial operations of the church has by and large been performed by volunteers. So many of you remember our longtime accountant Russ Stark, who passed several years ago, and all the work that he did. He was an amazing man and amazing worker for the church. When we no longer had Russ's services, we went to a mostly volunteer group that did everything for the financial operation of the church. And we're $1 million church, so there's a lot of things that go on to run the finances of the church. And also during that time, we had some tremendous process improvements and really revamped a lot of the processes and activities, make it much more efficient, make the church a little bit more money. And I wanted to start with really the driving force behind that, which is Bill Bergman. Bill's been the treasurer of the church for the last 3 years and has made tremendous positive change to what has been the financial operations of the church. Has put in countless hours into the volunteer work that he does, and is now really passionate about the Eastside Church gathering and making sure that there's financial processes that we can share across the Eastside churches too. So, Bill, this has been Bill's last year as treasurer. We are eternally grateful of everything that Bill's done, so if we could all just give Bill a great hand. Thank you, Bill, very much, and thanks for carrying on with some of the volunteer work that you're going to continue to do and pass the baton of financial operations. We've been extremely fortunate to have a new treasurer volunteer. This is not an easy job to go find somebody who's willing to do it. I don't want to do it again. It was great. So John Andreessen has agreed to become the new treasurer for St. Andrews. It's really great because this is John's second time around, and he served as treasurer for 10 years previously. So for him to take it on again is a great gift to us. So thank you, John, very much for that. I also wanted to thank John, Joni, and Todd Carmichael. They volunteered to be the audit committee of the church this year, and they put together a fantastic audit report. This is really great financial assurance for the church, where they've gone through and done audits of both our processes, our documentation, and then most importantly the numbers, to make sure that everything's in line. It's a great financial control for the church to make sure that all of the money that we bring in is appropriated appropriately and is taken care of well. is safeguarded to the best of our ability. So thanks to John, Joni, and Todd for their work this year for sure. And then three others that did a lot of the financial operations work of the church this year. We had Dick Szabo, Jan Bowerman, and Susan Hegedus did various roles in taking on the financial operation of the church. Payroll needs to be done, money needs to be counted, accounts receivable needs to be done. We have bank statements that need to be reconciled. All of these things were done by volunteers, and so we thank Jan, and Susan, and Dix very much. So we're going to get tired. And then very lastly, for volunteers, a group of people that have been doing really important work for the church many years is our counters. So every Sunday or Monday we have people come in and count money for us and get things deposited in the bank. And so that's a great volunteer job. That, like I said, almost $1 million comes in for various reasons, and those folks need to make sure that it's counted appropriately, accurately, and we get that money in the bank as soon as possible. So one last round of applause for the counters. Okay, hopefully you won't need to applause until the end. Again, we're getting a little sore. But anyway, I just wanted to finish up with the church doesn't run without these people and their volunteerism for getting all the financial stuff done at the church. It's a big job, and a job that has been done semi-historically by paid personnel, and for now it's been being done by volunteers. So thank you. Let's see. We'll just do a really quick overview of the role of the finance committee. It's a great committee. I've been on it for 18 years now. So I don't know why my wife gives a round of applause for that, but it's great. I'm only the second longest tenured person on the committee, though, because John has been on for even longer than me. So it's been great. There's a tremendous amount of experience on our committee. I think I've counted well over 100 years of professional experience, a lot of it in finance type roles. So it's a committee that has a lot of different background and a lot of different perspective that we bring to our reviews. So our main focus is we get together once a month and review the financial results of the church. That review of the financial results is around how much income we had, how much expenses we had, what goes on in the fund balances of the church to make sure that the money is moving. In many ways, it's just an audit experience, just to make sure that our money that we all contribute is being safeguarded and put to the right places. We also are one of our biggest functions, if not our biggest function, is making a budget recommendation to the council in January of every year. So we spend a pretty good amount of time developing a budget, working with the staff, seeing where we can push and pull up and down. It's been a pretty challenging process, especially post-COVID. We've had to make some really difficult recommendations and push money around to make sure that the financial stability of the church remains really solid, which it is. I think we've done some pretty good work over the last 5 years through a really challenging time to make sure that we're spending the church's money as wisely as we possibly can, especially while still making sure that we're contributing to our community partners and making sure that the staff continues to get the compensation that they deserve for sure. So I think we've done a really good job of our main core functions, making sure that the financial operations of the church is working properly, and making budget recommendations to the council that's appropriate for the income level that we've got. Before I move on to actual numbers, does anybody have any questions about either of the two topics that I've covered so far? Those were the easy ones. Okay, great. All right, let's talk about let's talk about the church in general from a big picture standpoint, and then we'll get into 2025 and 2026. So the church in general is in a really interesting place from a financial perspective. There's some good and there's some not as good. So I'll point out both, and you can all use that information as you like. We'll start with the good. I love to start with the good. The good is we've got money in the bank. The church is built on a very solid financial foundation. The church is not going bankrupt. It's never going to go bankrupt. Never is a strong word, but it's in a strong financial position. There's like I said, there's cash in the bank. We can cover expenses that we need to. Also, we're looking forward to what's to come over the next few years with the Imagine Housing project and some of the finance benefits that presents to the church. Also presents some risk to the church as well as we go forward, and so we're thinking about all of those things right now. So I think generally that's the good. The more challenging is that over the course of time we are getting smaller. There's no question about that. You can look at the history of the numbers. Income from giving has declined semi-steadily over the last 10 years. So certainly post-COVID, we're a smaller church than we were before. It's not dramatic, and it's not something that we can't overcome and haven't overcome from a budgetary standpoint. But it is something that we have to plan for and we have to make adjustments for over the course of time. As we get into the 2025 numbers and 2026 budget, we'll see where we've had to make some choices on just philosophy of where we're going. There's one philosophy that says that our income budget and expense budget should shrink every year, and it should shrink because that's just kind of where the church is going. There's a philosophy that says hold steady, and then there's a philosophy that says we should try to aggressively grow, because if you set some targets to grow, sometimes things happen, and it motivates to make things happen. This particular finance committee, in our budget recommendations as a philosophy, we've been more in the middle of the road for those. We haven't been too aggressive in our budget recommendation. We're not expecting miracles to happen, but we also have historically been, and this was a philosophy we had throughout the COVID time period. We do not want to put the church in a downward spiral from a budgetary recommendation standpoint. And you can get yourself in trouble when you start cutting programs and you start cutting more staff than you should. So we've been moderate in our recommendations for how we want to do. We want to recommend the financial operations of the church. So when you see the numbers, you'll see moderation in what we want to do from an income and expense budget standpoint. The other thing that we're really fortunate in is that we've got reserve balances in the church, and I'll highlight those as we go through the handout here, that allow us to take a tiny bit of risk as we go forward. And that tiny bit of risk is really important because, like I said, you can put in your budgetary recommendations and setting the budget, you can accidentally set a church in a downward spiral if you get too aggressive in your cost cutting, cost slashing type things. So we've got a tiny bit of risk in the budget, but only a tiny bit, and something that if things don't go our way, we can cover pretty easily. Okay, that's budgetary philosophy. We get to debate these things in our finance committee. It's a great time. We have a fantastic monthly meeting. Okay, let's look at 2025 and 2026 budget. So 2025, we had an income and expense budget, a balanced budget of $800,000 in our current fund. I'll remind folks who are less familiar with the financial operation of the church is that the current fund is our main income stream and expense stream. That's where most of the financial transactions of the church happen, but it's not all. There are many other activities of the church that happen that are outside of the current fund. People give to the Super Bowl of Caring. They give directly to some charity or another, contribute to the memorial fund. We also get memorial giving, and have had quite a bit of memorial giving over the last 2 to 3 years, where that when someone passes on and their estate gives money to the St. Andrews, that money typically does not go into the current fund. We'll put it into a special fund. Sometimes the family will designate where the funds would like to be spent. Sometimes the family just designate it for general. If it's designated for general, we put it in a reserve fund, and the council will make decisions about where that money is spent. So I don't want to give an impression that the current fund, some of the numbers that we're going to look at, is the only thing that happens in the church. There's quite a bit else that occurs as well. But like I said, we had an $800,000 budget for income and expenses this last year. We've historically come in very, very close to income and expenses over the last forever. And some years we're a little bit over, and some years we're a little bit under from an income versus expense perspective. This year we ended the year with $770,000 of income, mostly giving, although I'll highlight a couple of other areas. And we had about $788,000 of expenses, so we were under by about $18,000 this year. In years like this where we're under, we have to tap our reserve fund and cover the income that we didn't get to cover expenses, which we've done. So we've taken $18,000 out of our reserve fund and covered the shortfall for 2025. We'll get into some of the details in 2025 here in a moment, but like I said, we practice moderation in our budget philosophy. In 2026, we're recommending a budget of $805,000 and for both expenses and income. There's some opportunity in income here that we've got where we would ask folks to take a look at their giving. The $805,000 budget means that if everyone gave exactly how they gave last year plus 4%, that would close that gap up to $805,000. So that's as I've been thinking about my giving for next year, our family's giving for next year. That's something that I've kept in mind. The church doesn't get cheaper to run as we go along. Inflation hits the church just as much as everything else. Sometimes even a little bit harder. So stagnant giving sometimes is pretty difficult for the church to deal with. So it's just a reality of income and giving over the course of time. Anybody got any high-level questions about 2025 before I keep going? We did have, although we had income under budget, we also had expenses a bit under budget. One of the things that was under budget was payroll. The biggest reason that payroll was under budget was because we had a little bit more money in the budget than we'd spent for an accountant to help us. Last year, like I said, we covered a lot of things, almost everything with volunteers, and so we saved some money in the employee budget with volunteers. Question?
I think I saw that we have some income from building use.
Yes.
And that was less than expected. Did I notice that correctly?
You did.
And is that going to change in the coming year?
So building use is an interesting item for us. We don't spend any time going out and advertising that we have a building, and we have a building that's available. Most of the time, the philosophy here is that the building is available for community partners, especially community partners that are aligned to St. Andrew's general mission. To some extent, we're dependent on some word of mouth. there that people are aware that our church is available. One of the big items, though, from a building use perspective, is there are various groups that, maybe larger groups that are interested or have expressed interest in using the facility from time to time on a more regular basis. There's a specific church right now that's interested in perhaps using this hall for their church services on Sunday evenings. And those, when we get those, we don't charge exorbitant prices, but we charge a little bit, at least to cover our expenses plus for that. And if one of those activities comes to us this year, we'll close that gap from, I think it was like 43,000 that we got this year, and we had a budget of 50. So we kept the budget flat at 50 for this year, and we'll see if that closes. It's an opportunity, though.
My question was, why was it less last year than the budget planned for? What was different?
Well, first of all, it was more than 2020, 2024, so it has been going up a little bit. Frankly, we guessed, which is budgets are almost always guesses, and they're always wrong about how much more we were going to get. And if you remember, there was a school that was quite interested in using our facility when we were setting the budget in late 2024, and had that come to fruition, we would have been probably far over 50,000. So we're just trying to make our best educated guess.
Yeah, on the reserve fund,
Yeah.
you mentioned that we have a reserve fund, and we have income from there from memorial giving. I assume some income from interest. Is it possible to get a kind of a top view picture of that fund? It seems like that fund sits off to the side and kind of functions without having much transparency, much visibility as to what's going on. What is the source of the income going in there, and how are we using it?
Yeah, sure.
Year by year.
Yeah. The reserve fund it's probably got three main sources of money that goes into it. One is if we generate a surplus through the current fund. We didn't this year, but we did the previous year, and it sort of seems to go back and forth. They're no more than 9 or 15,000 up or down from there. The other source of income, the other major source of income to the reserve fund is memorials. So if folks give through their memorial and it's a general fund, the money will go into the reserve fund. The other place and the biggest source of income for this year for the reserve fund was we got some IRS payroll refunds from the COVID era, and that money went into the reserve fund. Bill or John, am I missing something?
That's the big one, the IRS refunds.
Do you publish that information? Why can't that information be?
It's there, Lyle. If you look at on the first page.
Can you give him a microphone, please?
On the very first page, the sources that Brady's talking about. First is memorial under fund balances. That has a current value of $113,000. Most of that is from bequests, as Brady mentioned, people that have passed away in the last 2 or 3 years who have given fairly substantial monies for the memorial fund. That's reserved, and it's up to council to decide how that money gets spent. The second reserve is maintenance reserve. Not a lot of money in there right now, but we did contribute over $20,000 last year to that fund. Some of that gets spent for pipe replacements, and I don't know, Kurt could probably give you lots of details about things that money was spent for. And then the third category that Brady mentioned is called the reserve fund under the fund balances. And that's where the pluses and minuses from the previous year get balanced out. So that number will go down by $18,000 in January. But it went up significantly this year due to the ERTC program that the government funded for during the COVID era to make companies healthy again for lost income due to the COVID shutdowns. So we received, I don't know, $160,000 or so far this year, and we're expecting more next year.
Sure. And, we're always happy to provide any detail that anybody knows what they want, because there's no secrets in the church books, and that's for sure. So happy to do that. Other questions before I keep going?
I have a question about our life stewardship campaign and the numbers of giving units. Has that decreased dramatically? Has that increased, et cetera?
Question is, have the number of families giving to the church increased or decreased over the last few years? We looked at data going back to 2021, and during the period 2021 through the last 5 years, giving units have been pretty flat. It's down less than 5% over the last 5 years. Now, one of the trends, though, that we did observe is that the people giving larger amounts, like $1,000 or more, that has decreased significantly by almost 30%. So those are the giving trends over the last 5 years that have partially resulted in the lower contributions numbers that Brady talked about.
Just to follow up on that, how our church attendance numbers aren't necessarily published, and so I'm not sure. It feels to me that our pews are fuller than they were, say, a year ago, or particularly 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. We talked about that the other night, in fact, and that data exists, and we just, we'll talk to Kathy about getting that maybe published periodically.
Thanks.
I got a question on the profile of the giving. Oftentimes in a church, 25% of the people will give 75% of the income. What does St. Andrews look like in that respect?
It's more drastic than that. Let me
90%?
look it up. Yeah, I'll look it up and take the microphone back in a minute.
Okay, any other questions before I keep going?
Just to comment on that, that's not necessarily a healthy situation because you've got our income dependent on a relatively small group that way.
That is definitely true. It's also always been true, yeah, it's a precarious spot, and it's definitely something that we look at when we're looking at all these budget recommendations. We spend a good deal of time during our budget conversations, and have for as long as I've been on the committee, thinking about exactly those things. But like I said, we try to make it a middle of the road, because we don't want to get too scared. If you're scared, you're gonna downward spiral. There's no question about it. But you don't want to get too aggressive at the same time, because our job is to be stewards of the church, and I think we've done a pretty darn fine job of making sure that we've stewarded well. Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to add that this is just a kind of a summary sheet, and that the treasurer's been reporting to council every month with much more detail. So there is oversight on all of these funds, and this is just more of a summary of it. And one of the things about the money from IRS is that our council has agreed with the treasurer to just hold on to that money, because it's possible that there could be an error in there. And there's been some, things going on with that money, so we just want to hold on to it until we're sure.
You mean it's not accounted for in these numbers?
What?
It's
Present time is not accounted for in the numbers?
no, it's
Yeah, it's in here, but it's in the summary. It's in the reserve, isn't it? The reserve fund, that's what the IRS money is.
that's
IRS money is in this table, correct?
Yeah.
The,
See, this is just
Reserve
a
fund.
summary of everything, and you see a breakdown of more, and it's possible that you could get that also. You need to see it better. Yeah.
Yeah, the IRS money is in the fund balance. It is called reserve fund. It went from 98,000 in 2024 to 292,000 in 2025, and that was all due to the IRS money. So almost $200,000. To your earlier question, Merle, 11% of our giving units give 50% of the church budget in 2025.
Which isn't great, but it's also not horrible. Kind of goes along with my whole middle of the road philosophy there. It could be much worse than that. Okay, let's see. We'll keep going with 2026 here. So the 2026 budget, I talked to you about philosophy. We talked to you about the top level where we're aiming for about a 4% increase across income and about a 3% increase across expenses. For those of you who've been here at this forum year after year, you'll hear one of the themes that I've talked about is that there's two pieces to running the church, or the financial aspect of the church, that dominate and have been dominating more over the course of time, and that's the cost of the staff and the cost of the building. Between those two items, the 2026 budget is 87% of the money in the current fund is those two items. And that percentage has been steadily increasing. In 2020, it was more like 80%, and now it's creeping up and up and up and up. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, is that an increasing amount of our income goes to those things. The other three categories of expenses, big categories of expenses, being programs, being giving, community giving, and being miscellaneous, more or less, have been a smaller percentage of the current fund. What I will say, though, about the especially the community giving, because that's something that's really important to all of us. We all want our money to go somewhere that's helping people. Our target in general is to have 10% of the total income for the church go to community giving in some way or another. What the current fund is right now is about 8%, but in the total amount of income that comes into the church, where people give to other things than just come in through the current fund, we're actually giving about 12% of our total income to community partners. So we're over that 10% target. We'd love to stay over that 10% target. We'd love to get the current fund up to 10%. Just trying to balance the budget. It's not particularly possible, so we're reliant on other sources of giving, maybe direct giving, like I said, the Super Bowl caring, or donating directly to the Messiah Girls School, or whatever it happens to be. Question?
On this pass through that you just mentioned, that brings the 12%. That's good that we recognize that. Do we keep track of what charities are receiving that pass through?
Oh, for sure.
So we can get some idea of what charities are being supported that way and which aren't.
Yeah, for sure. It's all the charities that we know that are here, but certainly that detail.
We keep track in terms of actual dollars given to each of these.
Yes.
I'd like to get a copy of that.
Yeah, sure. Yep. We definitely have it.
I have a question. Do we have a synod obligation or a synod contribution?
We do. Yeah, it's actually detailed there in the back pages of this. You can see our synod contribution. I think it was 19,000 something. Last year was our synod contribution.
It's on the outreach page.
So with that, they're using the word mission support?
Yeah, mission partners. Is that where it is? Northwest Washington Synod?
Yeah, Northwest Washington Synod
Yes.
mission support. It really is, the running of the synod business as well is included in that.
We give money to the synod, and they do all kinds of things with it, just like when we give money to the church.
The synod usually puts out a target that they would like to have the congregation meet. Do we meet that target?
I don't remember, Bill or John.
I
I don't know what the target is, but I suspect they're a little below what they would like to get.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, we're giving pretty consistently. I suspect giving more consistently than most churches, but probably a little bit below the target is my guess as well.
Oh, and then backhanded way back to the use of the facility, we don't charge commercial rates to the people coming in. So we probably could keep track of value for the facility compared to commercial
Yeah.
rates that we are actually giving back to those organizations
Yeah.
that are using the facility.
That's certainly a good point. We'd probably push ourselves closer to 20% if we.
Right.
And just to be clear, at some point in the past, that was somewhere on the balance sheet or something, that difference. But it's just hard to figure because of what is the commercial cost, what is the fair market value.
Sure.
But philosophically, yeah.
Yeah.
At any rate, the rest of the 2026 budget, there's not a lot of dramatic change in the 2026 budget. We've pushed and pulled a few things, and moved some money around in different categories, increased a few things, decreased a few things. You can see all the different changes in the 2026 budget, but especially compared to a few years ago, there's not much drama there. We've definitely funded salary increase for the staff. We've funded other critical mission for the church for sure. There's nothing that's taken any dramatic cuts. And generally the budget's relatively flat. Given though that there's inflationary pressure on both salaries and on building, that's an accomplishment to have flat. I'd like to recognize Kurt too. Kurt does an amazing job of taking care of this building at a say reasonable cost. I was going to use the word. I was going to say cheap, but it's not cheap. Yeah, Kurt's effort in making sure that we take care of this really large facility at a minimal cost is pretty fantastic. So we're super fortunate. Question?
Totally second that. The big hole on here is the maintenance reserve for 2026 is zero.
Yep.
I've been on the property committee with Kurt for as long as I can remember, and that doesn't work. We're going to come up with expenses that need to be filled. So how do we try and address that?
Yep. So here's our philosophy on maintenance reserve. We would like to fund maintenance reserve for sure. But we had a really difficult time fitting it in the budget this year because just trying to keep things flat. But also we have such a tremendous amount in both the memorial reserve and in the regular reserve. Also when that if something were to come up, we know we can cover. Also, when something specific happens with the building, it's a fantastic time for outreach and giving to that specific project. People give to need. And when something happens, setting up a specific fundraiser for that particular item is a good way to make it happen. So budgets are balanced. Trying to figure out which way to go and which way to go up and down is tough. But because we had these reserves that are pretty significant, almost $400,000, we didn't want to set up another reserve to give the church's money to. More questions on 2026 budget line items?
What about the $1,000 per family rebate? Aren't we going the Costco route?
The check's in the mail on that one, I heard. If the church is fortunate enough to get it, great. We'll do something cool with it.
An interesting thing that doesn't show up on this sheet, as far as I can tell, is all of those reserve funds and everything. A lot of it is invested, and the interest that we're getting is going into our income,
Yeah.
right? Our income to use. So that's why those reserve funds aren't growing with interest added on, because the interest is being put into our budget.
Good point.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and thanks for mentioning that. I was going to mention that that was another one of the things that the finance committee does is look at that, look at the cash balances that we do have in the bank, and we just don't let it sit there. We try to make it grow for us. We've taken a pretty risk-averse philosophy toward the church's money there. We don't have things invested in the stock market or any of that kind of thing, but we do, especially because we have Matt Cameron, who's on our team, as well as Darcy Johnson continues to advise us. We take money and put it in different places, and we get some pretty decent interest rates on the money that we do have sitting in the bank, and that money does go in the current fund and helps us offset other expenses. It's good stuff.
We're not using money market funds?
We are.
We currently have the dollars and it's invested in government securities, basically. And it was earning close to 4%, it's down to about 3.4 now. But that's where the investment income line item on the budget comes from.
It's a conservative fund.
By policy.
Yeah, we don't want to just have things sitting in the bank for sure. Okay, we probably got time for maybe one more question. Okay, I'll wrap it up then. First of all, thanks for coming. Thanks for being interested in the budget. This is meant to be a transparent process. If anybody has any follow-up questions, myself is a great contact point. Now, as John transitions into the treasurer role, another contact point. So if anybody has anything that you'd like, send us a note, give us a call, send us a text, grab us in church, and we're happy to answer. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Brady.